The morning sun cast long shadows across the crimson marshlands as Jake Murphy crouched behind a cluster of twisted trees. His beard had grown wild during his 6 months on this alien world, and his clothes were patched with pieces of local plant fibers. He held his breath as he watched the massive creatures moving through the swamp ahead of him. Jake had never seen anything like them before. The aliens stood 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in dark, shell-like armor that gleamed in the sunlight. Each one had 4 arms, and their heads were shaped like triangles with glowing yellow eyes. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their voices made clicking sounds when they spoke to each other. There were thousands of them scattered across the marshland, and they looked angry. Their heavy vehicles had sunk deep into the soft ground, and Jake could see smoke rising from several machines that seemed to be broken. The acidic water of the swamp had eaten through metal parts, leaving behind twisted wreckage. Jake knew he should run. These were Zephyrians, the feared warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Every human in the known universe had heard stories about their cruelty and their powerful armies. But something made him stay and watch. The aliens were in trouble. Jake could see it in the way they moved, the way their leaders pointed at maps and shook their heads. They had been here for 3 days now, and Jake had been watching them from a distance. Their advanced technology was failing them in this swamp, and they were trapped just like he had been when he first crashed here. Jake remembered his own first days on this planet. His mining ship had suffered engine failure and crash-landed in a clearing about 5 miles from here. The other crew members had died in the crash, leaving Jake alone with nothing but basic survival gear and his knowledge of working with wood and natural materials. His grandfather had been a military engineer, and Jake had learned plenty about building things from scratch during summers spent in the Oregon forests. The swamp had almost killed him too. The ground was soft and dangerous, full of hidden pockets of quicksand that could swallow a person in minutes. The water was acidic enough to burn skin and dissolve metal. Strange creatures lived beneath the surface, and Jake had learned to avoid certain areas after losing his boots to something with too many teeth, but Jake had survived by learning to work with the swamp instead of fighting it. He built his shelter on higher ground using fallen trees. He learned which plants were safe to eat and which ones would make him sick. He discovered how to move across the soft ground by spreading his weight across logs and branches. The swamp had become his home, and he knew its secrets. Now he watched the aliens struggle with the same problems he had faced. Their heavy boots sank into the soft earth. Their metal equipment corroded in the acidic air. Their energy weapons sparked and failed in the humid environment. They were learning what Jake had learned months ago, that sometimes the old ways worked better than new technology. Jake was about to leave when he heard shouting. A group of younger Zephyrian soldiers had wandered away from the main force and were now trapped in one of the most dangerous parts of the swamp. The ground there looked solid, but Jake knew it was actually floating vegetation over deep, acidic water. The young aliens were sinking slowly, and their panicked movements only made things worse. Their leader, a massive Zephyrian with gold markings on his armor, was shouting orders. But his soldiers could not reach the trapped group without risking their own lives. Jake watched as they tried to throw ropes, but the distance was too great. The trapped soldiers were sinking deeper, and their fear was obvious even to Jake. Jake found himself moving before he realized what he was doing. He grabbed a long, sturdy branch and began working his way toward the trapped aliens. He knew exactly where to step, which logs would support his weight, and how to move across the unstable ground. His grandfather had taught him these skills during flood rescues back on Earth, and they worked just as well here. The Zephyrians saw him coming and raised their weapons. Jake held up his hands to show he was not armed, but he did not stop moving. He reached the edge of the dangerous area and began placing logs to create a path. The wood floated on the acidic water, spreading his weight across a wider area and preventing him from sinking. "Stay still," Jake called out to the trapped soldiers. He did not know if they understood English, but his tone was calm and steady. "Do not move around. You are making it worse." The aliens looked confused, but they stopped struggling. Jake worked quickly, placing one log after another, creating a floating bridge toward them. He moved carefully, testing each piece of wood before putting his full weight on it. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as the human crossed the deadly ground using nothing but fallen trees. Jake reached the first trapped soldier and grabbed his arm. The alien was heavy, but Jake had been doing physical work all his life. He pulled the soldier onto the log bridge and then moved to the next one. One by one, he guided all 5 trapped Zephyrians to safety, using the same technique his grandfather had taught him for rescuing people from floodwaters. When the last soldier was safe, Jake found himself surrounded by dozens of armed Zephyrians. Their weapons were pointed at him, but their leader held up one of his 4 hands. The massive alien stepped forward, and Jake could see intelligence in his glowing yellow eyes. "You saved my soldiers," the alien said in heavily accented English. "Why?" Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and looked around at the alien army. "Because they needed help," he said simply. "Same reason anyone would help." The alien leader studied Jake for a long moment. "I am General Vexstar of the 3rd Assault Fleet. You are human." "Jake Murphy," Jake replied. "And yes, I am human. Been living in this swamp for 6 months." General Vexstar's eyes widened slightly. "You survived here for 6 months? Alone?" Jake nodded. "It is not easy, but it can be done. You just have to know how to work with the swamp instead of fighting it." The general looked around at his stranded army, then back at Jake. "Our technology fails here. Our vehicles sink. Our weapons malfunction. We are trapped, and our enemies know it." "I can see that," Jake said. "This swamp does not like metal and electronics. Too much acid in the air and water. But wood works. Fine, stone works fine. Sometimes the old ways are better." General Vexstar was quiet for a moment. Jake could see him thinking, weighing options. Finally, the alien leader spoke again. "By the ancient codes of my people, I owe you a life debt for saving my soldiers." "You could have left them to die," Jake shrugged. "Where I come from, we help people in trouble. Does not matter what species they are." The general's expression changed slightly, and Jake thought he might have seen something like respect in those alien eyes. Around them, those Zephyrians were talking quietly among themselves, clearly surprised by what they had witnessed. "Human Jake Murphy," General Vexstar said formally, "I offer you protection and safe passage. In return, perhaps you can help. You understand this place that has defeated our technology." Jake looked around at the thousands of stranded aliens, then at the treacherous swamp stretching out in all directions. He thought about his grandfather's words about helping others and about the satisfaction that came from solving problems with simple tools and clever thinking. "I suppose I can try," Jake said. "But first, you need to understand something about this swamp. It is not your enemy, it is just different. And different does not mean impossible." Jake followed General Vexstar through the alien camp, stepping carefully around the broken vehicles and frustrated soldiers. The smell of corroded metal filled the air, and Jake could hear the angry buzzing of failing electronics. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same story, advanced technology losing the battle against the swamp's harsh environment. "How long have you been here?" Jake asked as they walked past a group of Zephyrian engineers trying to fix a communication device. Sparks flew from the machine, and one of the engineers made a disgusted clicking sound. 3 days, General Vexstar replied. 3 days too long. Every hour we remain here, we lose more equipment, more soldiers." Jake noticed how the general's voice carried worry beneath the authority. These aliens might be feared across the galaxy, but right now they were just as lost and scared as any other creatures stuck in a dangerous place. They reached the center of the camp, where a large tent had been set up on a small rise of solid ground. Inside, Jake saw maps spread across tables and dozens of alien officers arguing in their clicking language. The tent smelled of wet metal and something sharp that made Jake's nose wrinkle. "Show him," General Vexstar ordered one of his officers. The officer, smaller than the general but still much taller than Jake, activated a holographic display. The image showed the swamp from above, with the alien army marked as a red dot surrounded by miles of dangerous terrain. We are here, the officer explained, pointing to the red dot. We need to reach this location. He pointed to a green area about 2 miles away. High ground, solid rock. From there, our ships can evacuate us. Jake studied the map, recognizing landmarks he had seen during his months in the swamp. What is chasing you? Why can you not just stay here until help arrives? General Vextar's expression darkened. Show him the other problem. The officer touched the display and new markers appeared on the map. Blue dots moved through the swamp, and Jake could see they were getting closer to the red dot representing the alien army. Rebels, General Vextar explained. They stole important military secrets from us. We chased them here, but it was a trap. They know this swamp and they let us into the worst part of it on purpose. They attack us when we try to move, another officer added. Small groups, hit and run. They pick off our soldiers and disappear back into the swamp. Jake nodded, understanding the strategy. Smart. They use the swamp as a weapon against you. But that is not our biggest problem, General Vextar said grimly. Tell him about the stalkers. The officer's hands shook slightly as he adjusted the display. New symbols appeared on the map, large, moving shapes that seemed to patrol the deeper parts of the swamp. Marsh stalkers, the officer said, the apex predators of this region. They live beneath the surface and hunt anything that moves through. Their territory. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard strange sounds in the swamp at night, had seen enormous ripples in the water that moved against the current. But he had never seen one of these creatures up close. How big are they? Jake asked. 15 feet long, maybe more, General Vextar replied. Tentacles like thick cables? Teeth that can bite through our armor. They smell blood from miles away. We have lost 17 soldiers to them, the officer added quietly. Maybe more. When someone disappears in this swamp, we do not always find the body. Jake looked at the map again, seeing the situation clearly now. The alien army was trapped between rebel attacks from one side and deadly predators from the other. Their technology was failing, their vehicles were stuck, and they had no way to call for help. Your communication equipment does not work here? Jake asked. The swamp interferes with our signals, General Vextar explained. Too much electromagnetic activity from the plant life. Our messages cannot reach our ships in orbit. Jake walked to the edge of the tent and looked out at the swamp. The water was still and dark, but he knew it was full of hidden dangers. He had learned to read the signs, the way the water moved, the sounds that meant trouble, the places where even the local animals refused to go. You need to cross 2 miles of that, Jake said, pointing toward the distant high ground. With 10,000 soldiers and all your equipment. Impossible, one of the officers said. Our vehicles cannot move through the deep water. The ground is too soft for our heavy equipment. And the stalkers will attack anything that disturbs the water. We have tried everything, General Vextar said. Our engineers cannot find a solution. Every path we plan leads through water too deep for our soldiers or ground too soft for our machines. Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking. He remembered his grandfather's stories about building bridges during the war, about moving heavy equipment across rivers and swamps when normal roads were impossible. The old man had always said that the secret was not to fight the water, but to work with it. What if you did not have to walk through the water? Jake said finally. What do you mean? General Vextar asked. What if you could walk over it? The alien officers looked at each other and made clicking sounds that Jake guessed meant confusion or disbelief. Our hover technology does not work in this environment, one officer explained. Too much interference. Our platforms crash. I am not talking about hover technology, Jake said. I'm talking about floating, General Vextar stared at Jake. Floating? A bridge, Jake said simply. A floating bridge made from the trees in this swamp. Logs tied together to spread the weight. Anchored so it does not drift away. Built in. Sections so it can flex with the water movement. The officers began clicking rapidly among themselves. Jake did not understand their language, but he could tell they were arguing. Impossible, one officer said in English. Primitive materials cannot support the weight of our army. Our equipment is too heavy for wood. You think so? Jake asked. How much does your heaviest vehicle weigh? 12 tons, the officer replied. Jake grinned. My grandfather built bridges that carried tanks weighing 50 tons. Using nothing but trees and rope, General Vextar looked interested. This was done before? By humans? Many times, Jake said. During wars, when regular bridges were destroyed, engineers would build floating bridges from whatever materials they could find. Wood, empty barrels, even boats tied together. The secret is understanding how much weight water can support. But the stalkers, another officer protested. They will attack anything in the water, not if we build it right, Jake said. These creatures hunt by sensing movement and vibrations. But a properly built bridge does not move much. It floats steady and quiet, and we can build it in sections, so if one part gets damaged, the rest stays safe. General Vextar was quiet for a long time, studying the map. Finally, he looked at Jake with those glowing yellow eyes. You believe this can work? Jake nodded. I know it can work, but I will need help. Your soldiers will have to learn to work with wood instead of metal. They will have to use their hands instead of their machines, and they will have to trust that sometimes the old ways are better than the new ways. The general looked around at his officers, then back at Jake. If you can get my army across this swamp, human Jake Murphy, I will make sure the Zephyrian Empire remembers your name with honor? Jake smiled. Let us start by finding the right trees. Jake walked through the swamp forest with General Vextar and a group of alien engineers. The Zephyrians moved awkwardly through the thick vegetation, their heavy boots sinking into the soft ground with each step. Jake moved easily between the trees, his lighter human frame allowing him to step on roots and fallen logs without breaking through the surface. Not that one, Jake said, pointing to a large tree that one of the engineers had marked. Too old. See how the bark is peeling? That means the inside is probably rotten. The alien engineer made a clicking sound of frustration. How can you tell? We have instruments that can scan the internal structure. Do your instruments work here? Jake asked. The engineer tried to activate his scanning device. It sparked and went dead. No, the interference destroys our electronics. Then we do it the old way, Jake said. He walked over to the tree and knocked on it with his knuckles. The sound was hollow. Hear that? Good wood makes a solid sound. Rotten wood sounds empty. Jake moved to another tree and knocked on it. This time the sound was sharp and clear. This one is good, strong wood, still alive inside. This is what we need. General Vextar watched as Jake demonstrated how to test each tree. You can tell all this just by listening? My grandfather taught me, Jake said. He learned it from his grandfather, who learned it from his. Humans have been working with wood for thousands of years. We know how to pick the good pieces. They spent the morning selecting trees. Jake showed the aliens how to look for signs of disease, how to check for insect damage, and how to identify the species that would float best. The Zephyrians were amazed by how much information Jake could gather just by touching and listening to the wood. We need about 200 logs, Jake explained as they worked. Each one about 20 feet long and at least 2 feet thick. The bigger trees we can cut into sections. Our cutting tools still work, one engineer said, activating a plasma cutter. The beam sliced through a tree trunk like butter, dropping the massive log with a thunderous crash. Careful, Jake warned. Too much noise will attract the stalkers and cut them longer than we need. We can trim them later, but we cannot make them longer. As they worked, Jake heard a familiar voice calling his name. He turned to see a figure emerging from the trees, a woman in torn military fatigues, her dark hair tied back with strips of cloth. Jake, is that really you? Jake grinned. Lisa Grant, I thought you were dead. Lisa Grant was a marine engineer who had been on a different ship when Jake's mining vessel crashed. Her transport had gone down on the other side of the swamp, and Jake had assumed she had not survived. I have been living in the eastern part of the swamp, Lisa explained, looking curiously at the alien soldiers. I heard the noise and came to investigate. Are these the Zephyrians everyone talks about? They are, Jake said, and they are stuck, just like we were. I am helping them build a bridge to get out of here. Lisa studied the fallen logs and the alien engineers. A pontoon bridge? That is actually brilliant. These logs will float, and if we lash them together properly, they can support massive weight. General Vexstar stepped forward. You are also a human military? Marine Corps engineer? Lisa replied. I know a thing or two about bridge building, especially emergency bridges, made from local materials. Jake felt relieved. Lisa's military training would be invaluable. Can you help us? Of course, Lisa said. What do you need? Jake and Lisa began planning the bridge construction while the Zephyrian engineers listened. Jake explained the basic principle. Logs tied together would create a floating platform that could support weight by spreading it across the water surface. Each log can support about 3 tons, Lisa calculated. If we lash them together properly, a section of 20 logs can carry one of their heavy vehicles. How do we keep the sections connected? One alien engineer asked. Flexible joints? Jake explained. We tie the sections together with rope, but we leave some slack. That way the bridge can move with the water without breaking apart. Lisa drew diagrams in the mud, showing how the logs should be arranged. We alternate the direction of each log. Some point forward, some point backward. That makes the platform more stable. What about anchoring? General Vexstar asked. The current will push the bridge downstream. We sink anchor posts into the bottom, Jake said. Big logs driven deep into the mud. We tie guide ropes to them to keep the bridge in the right position. The aliens watched as Jake and Lisa demonstrated how to tie the logs together. They used a combination of knots that Jake had learned from his logging days and military techniques that Lisa remembered from her engineer training. This rope will not hold, one Zephyrian engineer protested. It is too primitive. Test it. Lisa challenged. The engineer grabbed the rope and pulled with all his strength. The knot held firm. Another engineer joined him, and then a third. The rope stretched but did not break. Impossible, the first engineer muttered. Not impossible, Jake said. Just different. Your technology is about making things stronger with better materials. Our technology is about making things stronger with better techniques. They began building the first section of the bridge. Jake and Lisa worked side by side, showing the aliens how to position each log and how to tie the knots properly. The Zephyrians were clumsy at first, their 4 arms getting in the way as they tried to manipulate the rope. Slower, Lisa instructed. Take your time. A bad knot will fail when you need it most. Gradually, the aliens began to understand. They started to appreciate the skill required to work with natural materials. Jake noticed that they stopped complaining about the primitive methods and began asking questions about technique. Why do you tie this knot differently? One engineer asked. Because this part of the bridge will have more stress, Jake explained. Different jobs need different knots. My grandfather taught me dozens of different ways to tie rope, each one for a specific purpose. As the first section took shape, Jake could see the aliens becoming more confident. They began to work together better, learning to coordinate their movements. Some of them even seemed to enjoy the physical work. It is strange, General Vexstar observed. My soldiers are warriors, not builders, but they are learning. Building is just another kind of fighting, Lisa said. You are fighting against forces that want to tear your structure apart? Water, wind, weight, time, you have to be smarter than all of them. By evening, they had completed the first section of the bridge. It was 20 feet long and 10 feet wide, made from dozens of logs lashed together with rope. Jake and Lisa tested it by walking across it, then by having several Zephyrian soldiers stand on it at once. It works, one of the engineers said, sounding surprised. Of course it works, Jake said. Humans have been building bridges like this for centuries. We just do not usually build them for alien armies. General Vexstar stood on the bridge section, feeling how it moved slightly with the water but remained stable. How long will it take to build the full bridge? 2 miles of bridge, Lisa calculated. We will need about 50 sections like this. 1. If we can build 3 sections per day, it will take us about 2 weeks. We do not have 2 weeks, the general said. The rebels are getting closer, and the stalkers are becoming more aggressive. We need to move faster. Jake looked at the alien army spread across the swamp. Then we need more workers. How many of your soldiers can you spare for construction? All of them, General Vextar said firmly. Every soldier who is not on guard. Duty will help build this bridge. We will work day and night if necessary. Good, Jake said. But remember, this is not about strength or speed. This is about patience and skill. Rush the work and the bridge will fail. Take the time to do it right, and it will carry your entire army to safety, Lisa smiled. Welcome to human engineering, General. Sometimes the best technology is the simplest technology. The second day of construction started before dawn. Jake woke to the sound of Zephyrian soldiers moving through the camp, their heavy footsteps splashing through puddles of marsh water. The aliens had worked through the night, and Jake could see they had already completed 2 more bridge sections. They are fast learners, Lisa said, joining Jake as he inspected the new sections. Look at these knots. Much better than yesterday. Jake tested the rope work and nodded approvingly. Your grandfather would be proud, he said to one of the alien engineers. My grandfather was a plasma cannon specialist, the engineer replied. He would not understand this work. Maybe not, Jake said. But he would understand the importance of doing a job, right? The work continued through the morning. Jake and Lisa had organized the aliens into teams, with each team responsible for building one section of the bridge. Zephyrians worked with surprising dedication, their 4 arms allowing them to handle multiple ropes at once they learned the proper techniques, but their progress was interrupted by the sharp crack of energy weapons firing in the distance. Rebels, General Vextar announced, his voice carrying across the camp. They are testing our defenses again. Jake looked toward the sound of the fighting. How close are they? Too close, the general replied. They attack from different directions, trying to find weak spots in our perimeter. So far we have held them off, but they are learning our patterns. A Zephyrian soldier came running through the camp, his armor scorched by weapons fire. General, they hit the supply depot. We lost 3 vehicles and a communications array. General Vextar's expression darkened. Double the patrols, and move the bridge construction teams further from the perimeter. But moving the construction did not solve the problem. The rebels had studied the alien army for days, and they knew exactly where the most important work was happening. As the 4th bridge section neared completion, enemy fire began hitting the work area. Take cover, Lisa shouted as energy bolts sizzled through the air above them. The Zephyrian workers dove behind logs and equipment. Jake rolled under a partially completed bridge section and pulled Lisa down beside him. The rebels were firing from hidden positions in the thick vegetation, using hit-and-run tactics that made them nearly impossible to target. They are trying to stop the bridge, General Vextar said, crouching beside Jake. They know it is our only way out. Jake watched as energy bolts destroyed several completed rope joints. We need to protect the work areas. Can you set up a defensive perimeter around the construction sites? We can try, the general said. But we do not have enough soldiers to guard everything. The rebels can attack from any direction. The attack ended as quickly as it began, with the rebels melting back into the swamp, but the damage was done. 2 bridge sections had been damaged, and several alien workers had been injured. We repair and keep building, Jake said firmly. They want to stop us, which means they are scared of what we are doing. The work continued, but now every worker had to keep one eye on the construction and one eye on the surrounding swamp. The rebels attacked twice more that day, forcing the workers to take cover and disrupting the careful timing of the bridge construction, but the rebels were not the only threat. On the 3rd day, Jake was working with a team of aliens to position a new bridge section when he heard a sound that made his blood freeze, a low, rumbling moan that seemed to come from deep underwater. Everyone stop moving, Jake whispered urgently. Do not make any noise. The Zephyrians froze, their eyes wide with fear. The water around the bridge began to ripple, and Jake could see something massive moving beneath the surface. Marsh Stalker. One of the aliens whispered. Jake had studied the movement patterns of these creatures during his months in the swamp. They hunted by sensing vibrations in the water, and they were attracted to anything that disturbed their territory. The bridge construction had definitely disturbed their territory. The creature surfaced about 50 yards away, and Jake got his first clear look at a marsh stalker. It was even more terrifying than the aliens had described. 15 feet of muscle and teeth with thick tentacles that could crush metal and jaws that could swallow a person whole. Its eyes were like black mirrors scanning the water for movement. Do not move, Jake breathed. It hunts by motion. The stalker circled the area slowly, its tentacles trailing through the water. Jake could see several more ripples in the distance, indicating that other creatures were also investigating the disturbance. After what felt like hours, the stalker moved away, disappearing beneath the dark water. Jake waited another 10 minutes before allowing anyone to move. We need to be more careful, Lisa said quietly. If we attract too many of those things, they will attack the bridge while people are crossing it. Jake nodded. We build in sections and test each one carefully. No sudden movements, no loud noises, and we post guards to watch for ripples in the water. The work became more dangerous as they progressed. The rebels continued their attacks, forcing the workers to build while under fire. The marsh stalkers became more aggressive, attracted by the increasing activity in their territory. Several times, construction had to stop completely while the creatures investigated the bridge. On the fourth day, disaster struck. A group of rebels managed to get close enough to plant explosives on one of the completed bridge sections. The explosion sent logs flying and created a gap in the bridge that would take hours to repair. We cannot continue like this, one of the alien engineers sighed. The rebels will destroy the bridge faster than we can build it. Jake looked at the damaged section and made a decision. We need to draw them away from the construction area. How? General Vextar asked. We give them a target they cannot resist. Jake said, Me? Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. That is suicide. You cannot outrun their weapons. I do not need to outrun them, Jake said. I need to outthink them. I know this swamp better than they do. I can lead them into areas where their weapons will not work. General Vextar studied Jake's face. You would do this for us? Risk your life for an alien army? You are not just an alien army anymore, Jake said. You are people trying to get home, same as me. Jake spent the evening planning his diversion. He would use the partially completed bridge to reach the far side of the construction area, then make himself visible to the rebels. When they came after him, he would lead them through the most dangerous parts of the swamp, using his knowledge of the terrain to stay ahead of them. It is a good plan, Lisa said, but you should not go alone. I have to, Jake said. More people means more noise, more tracks to follow. I can move faster alone. The next morning, Jake began his dangerous mission. He crossed the completed sections of the bridge, moving carefully to avoid attracting the marsh stalkers. On the far side, he began making noise and leaving obvious tracks, drawing the rebels' attention away from the construction area. The plan worked. Jake could hear the rebels moving through the swamp behind him, following his trail. He led them deeper into the marshland, using fallen logs and hidden paths to stay ahead of their weapons. But as he moved through the swamp, Jake heard something that made him change course immediately. The sound of a marsh stalker in distress, followed by the crackle of energy weapons. The rebels had encountered one of the creatures and they were fighting it. Jake realized this was his chance. He doubled back toward the sound of the battle, moving carefully through the thick vegetation. He found the rebels pinned down by a massive marsh stalker, their weapons barely scratching its thick hide. Without thinking, Jake grabbed a fallen log and began making noise in the water, drawing the creature's attention. The stalker turned toward him, giving the rebels a chance to escape. But now Jake was the one in danger. The creature lunged at him, its tentacles reaching through the water. Jake rolled to one side and used his knowledge of the swamp to confuse the beast. He led it in circles, using the terrain to his advantage. Until the creature finally gave up and swam away. When Jake returned to the construction site, he found General Vexstar waiting for him. "The rebels are gone," the general said. "You saved their lives, even though they were trying to kill you," Jake shrugged. "Nobody deserves to be eaten by a marsh stalker, not even rebels." General Vexstar looked at Jake with something like wonder in his alien eyes. "You are not like other humans I have heard about. Maybe," Jake said. "Or maybe we are all like this, and you just never gave us a chance to show it." 2 weeks after construction began, Jake stood at the edge of the completed pontoon bridge and felt a deep sense of pride. The wooden structure stretched across 2 miles of dangerous swampland, floating steady and strong on the dark water. 50 sections of carefully lashed logs created a pathway to safety for the entire Zephian army. "It is beautiful," General Vexstar said, standing beside Jake. "I never thought I would say that about something made from trees and rope." Lisa checked the final anchor points one more time. "All secure. The bridge can handle the weight of your heaviest vehicles, and the flexible joints will let it move with the water without breaking." Jake nodded, watching the morning mist rise from the swamp. "My grandfather would have been amazed. He built bridges to cross rivers, but never anything this long." The evacuation began at sunrise. Jake and Lisa positioned themselves at different points along the bridge to guide the crossing and watch for problems. General Vexstar organized his troops into groups, with the lightest soldiers crossing first to test the bridge's stability. The first group of Zephyrian soldiers stepped onto the wooden platform nervously. Their heavy boots made the logs creak, but the bridge held firm. As they walked across, Jake could see their confidence growing. The bridge swayed slightly with the movement of the water, but it felt solid beneath their feet. "It works," one soldier called back to his comrades. "The human bridge actually works." More soldiers followed, and soon there was a steady stream of aliens walking across the floating bridge. Jake watched from the center section, making sure the ropes held and the logs stayed properly aligned. The bridge performed exactly as he had hoped, distributing the weight across the water and flexing with the natural movement of the swamp. "Your turn," Jake told a group of engineers who were waiting with their equipment. "Remember, keep moving and do not all bunch up in one spot." The engineers crossed successfully, carrying their tools and remaining electronic devices. Next came the medical team with wounded soldiers, followed by the supply crews with whatever equipment had survived the swamp's corrosive environment. By midday, half the army had crossed safely. Jake was starting to relax when he heard Lisa shout a warning from the far end of the bridge. "Stalkers in the water, multiple contacts." Jake looked down and saw ripples moving toward the bridge from several directions. The constant traffic across the wooden platform had finally attracted the attention of every marsh stalker in the area. "Keep moving," Jake called to the soldiers on the bridge. "Do not stop. Do not look down, just keep walking." The first stalker surfaced near the middle of the bridge, its massive head breaking the water just 20 feet from where Jake stood. The creature studied the floating logs with its black mirror eyes, trying to understand what this strange object was. Jake held perfectly still, remembering everything he had learned about these predators. They hunted by motion and vibration. As long as the bridge remained steady and the soldiers kept moving at an even pace, the creatures might not recognize it as prey. The stalker circled the bridge slowly, its tentacles brushing against the logs. Jake could hear the Zephyrian soldiers trying not to panic, their breathing quick and shallow. But they trusted Jake's instructions and kept walking, their heavy boots maintaining the same steady rhythm. More stalkers appeared, drawn by the activity. Soon there were 6 of the massive creatures surrounding the bridge. Jake could see General Vexstar on the shore, his weapons ready but useless at this distance. "Easy," Jake whispered to the soldiers near him. "They are just curious. As long as we do not threaten them, they will not attack." But one of the younger soldiers lost his nerve. He stumbled and grabbed for support, causing a section of the bridge to shake violently. The sudden movement triggered every predator instinct the stalkers possessed. The nearest creature lunged at the bridge, its tentacles wrapping around the logs. The impact sent shock waves through the entire structure, and several soldiers fell to their knees. "Hold on!" Jake shouted. "Do not fall in the water." Jake grabbed a long pole he had prepared for emergencies and began poking at the stalkers. Tentacles. The creature was not really trying to destroy the bridge, it was just investigating this strange new object in its territory. But its curiosity was dangerous enough to kill everyone on the bridge. "Get off!" Jake yelled, hitting the creature harder. "This is not food!" Lisa appeared beside him with another pole. Together they convinced the stalker to let go of the bridge and sink back beneath the surface. The other creatures watched for a moment, then began to lose interest as the bridge returned to its steady, non-threatening motion. "Keep crossing," Jake called to the remaining soldiers. "Slow and steady, no sudden movements." The evacuation continued through the afternoon. Jake and Lisa moved back and forth along the bridge, helping soldiers who were having trouble and making sure the structure remained stable. The stalkers continued to patrol the area, but they no longer seemed interested in attacking the bridge. As evening approached, the last group of soldiers prepared to cross. This included General Vexstar and the heaviest equipment that had survived the swamp. Jake watched nervously as a 12-ton vehicle rolled onto the bridge. The logs groaned under the weight, and the entire structure sank several inches deeper into the water. But the bridge held. Jake's calculations had been correct, and the distributed weight was well within the platform's capacity. "Incredible," General Vexstar said as his vehicle reached the center of the bridge. "Wood and rope supporting 12 tons of metal. How is this possible?" "Physics," Lisa replied with a smile. "The same laws that govern your spacecraft. We just apply them differently." When the last soldier reached the far shore, Jake and Lisa were the only ones left on the bridge. They walked across together, checking each section one final time to make sure nothing had been left behind. "We did it," Lisa said as they stepped onto solid ground. "We actually did it." Jake looked back at the bridge floating on the dark water. 2 miles of swamp crossed safely. 10,000 soldiers saved, not bad for primitive technology. General Vexstar was waiting for them on the shore. Around him, his army was already preparing for evacuation. Ships were descending from orbit, their lights cutting through the evening sky. "Human Jake Murphy," the general said formally. "Human Lisa Grant, you have saved the 3rd Assault Fleet. The Zephyrian Empire owes you a debt that cannot be repaid." "We do not need payment," Jake said. "We just help people who needed help." General Vexstar was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the bridge that had saved his army. "I have spent my life believing that strength comes from superior weapons and advanced technology. But you have shown me something different. You have shown me that true strength comes from the ability to solve problems with whatever tools you have available. It is not about the tools," Lisa said. "It is about how you think. Humans do not always have the best technology, so we learn to be creative. We learn to adapt. We learn to work with our environment instead of trying to control it. My people will want to study your bridge-building techniques," the general said. "But I think the real lesson here is not about engineering. It is about perspective." Jake nodded. Different does not mean inferior. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Sometimes simple solutions are better than complex ones. General Vexstar turned to address both humans. "I am returning to the Zephyrian fleet. Lisa Grant, I offer you a position as tactical advisor to our engineering corps. Your knowledge of human building techniques could be valuable to our expansion efforts." Lisa considered the offer. "I accept. It is time for humans and Zephyrians to work together instead of against each other." The general looked at Jake. "And you, Jake Murphy, will you join us as well?" Jake looked around at the swamp that had been his home for 6 months. Despite all its dangers, he had grown to love this place. It had taught him things about himself and about survival that he never could have learned anywhere else. "Thank you, General, but this planet is my home now. I think I will stay and keep learning from it." General Vexstar nodded with respect. "I understand. But know this, when I report to the High Command, I will recommend that humanity be reclassified as a strategic ally rather than a primitive species. What you have accomplished here proves that humans possess a form of intelligence that we have not encountered before. What kind of intelligence? Jake asked. The intelligence to find simple solutions to impossible problems, the general replied. The intelligence to work with nature instead of against it. The intelligence to help others, even when those others are your enemies. As the evacuation ships lifted off into the night sky, Jake stood on the shore and watched them go. The floating bridge bobbed gently on the water behind him. A testament to human ingenuity and the power of working together, Lisa had gone with the aliens to start a new chapter in human-Zephyrian relations. But Jake remained, ready to continue. Learning the secrets of the swamp and proving that sometimes the best technology was the simplest technology.